Hi, and welcome to the Climate Healers Food Show. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today because every single one of us, whether we dig ditches, whether we are in a palace, whether we are striving simply to survive from minute to minute, whether we're dealing with mental illness, whether we are dealing with health that just erupts from us at the highest level of our being. Every one of us, our energies are impacting the climate because we are a web. We are like this hand, and each of us is part of the hand, each finger. Like you're a finger, I'm a finger, your mother is a finger, your brother is a finger, and all of us are part of the same hand. And so when we talk about the environment, we're talking about the inner environment and the outer environment. They are one because the inner environment within us, or thoughts or feelings or moods, who we are, affects everything else on the outside, and everything on the outside affects also us in turn, and our own makeup, our own biology. And so in this show, the Climate Healers Food Show, you are going to be learning about how powerful you are and how each and every one of us has been destined to raise ourselves up to the level of creativity that we've never experienced before or known, because we've been given a huge challenge on this planet now to undo all the harm we have done. And we need to find a way to raise our vibrations up to meet the challenge, and that's what the show is about. So I welcome you all, and I'm so grateful to have Dr. Sailesh Rao, who is the creator of Climate Healers.
Hi.
What a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You are the person who founded Climate Healers. Could you first of all tell us why that name?
I was looking for a name that's appropriate for what we wanted to do. Because I had been working with Al Gore at that time. And I wanted to sort of change the mainstream framing of climate change, because the climate change was being spoken about as something that's going to happen. And it's up to us to make sure it doesn't get much worse than what it is now. And I said, no, wait a minute. We need to reverse it. We need to heal the climate. Right, so that was my thought process, and first I looked for planet healers to see if there is a planet healers available, and that was already taken. Then I looked for earth healers, that was already taken. Then I looked for climate healers, and it wasn't taken. So I said, okay, that's ours. We'll take it.
Do you know that's my preference, actually, because it encompasses everything that I personally think is important in our lives. Because we are the climate.
Right.
And every day we actually produce a different climate according to our thoughts or beliefs, what we eat, what we drink, how we take care of ourselves, and the climate incline response. So we have our own microclimate, in our life, and then there's the macroclimate. And I'm going to be connecting the dots on the show, showing how the soil, what's beneath the soil, determines what's above the soil. So maybe above the soil, there's a tree growing on which this banana will grow. In a different soil, this banana will grow, the Cavendish, a different kind of banana, two different kinds of bananas, all determined by the soil. The soil determines the climate, because this can only grow in certain climates and this will grow in certain climates. And so all of this is so related. And so I am so glad you chose this name, Dr. Rao. Now, because you really, to me, are the lifeblood of Climate Healers and of the show, please tell me something about your childhood.
I was born a twin. And my twin passed away at childbirth. So my mother told me that, I was born along with the bucket of flesh, or something like that. That's the way she put it. And I was a very sickly child. So it took her She said she used to massage my chest to help me breathe. So I had trouble breathing. I still have very low lung capacity compared to anyone else. So I really cannot jog too much and run too much and so on. But otherwise, I'm fine now. I was raised in Chennai, India. So I was born in Mangalore, but I was raised in Chennai. The Mangalore is on the west coast of India, and Chennai is on the east coast of India. But it's on the beach. Right? It's a beach city, and I was a pretty precocious child, so because I skipped 2 grades and went to my second grade right away. you know so I didn't go through kindergarten or first grade. I went straight to second grade because I was learning from my brother. So I have an older brother. I'm the middle child among 5, so and otherwise I had a pretty uneventful childhood. I used to love playing cricket.
You loved what?
I love playing cricket.
Ah, you love playing cricket. What did you learn from cricket?
What did I learn from cricket? To me, it was the camaraderie of the team, that we were working together for
and look what you've done now. Look what you've done. You've put a team together.
I'm trying at least. Yeah, I have a great team, actually.
You're doing a great job of it. You are doing a marvelous job of it. I mean, people want to be on your team.
Thank you. Yes, they do. I mean, there are a lot of amazing people on the team now who are, without them, I wouldn't be able to put on these Vegan World 2026 convergences. It's all done by people who are volunteers, coming together and saying, because they also have the same vision. They want to see a vegan world by 2026. And that unites.
Why a vegan world? Why a vegan world?
You see, very soon after I started Climate Healers, I realized that what we eat is foundational to what's happening in the planet. Okay, it's all related to how what we put in our mouth determines how we relate to the earth. So I quickly realized that going vegan, which is fundamentally saying I'm not going to hurt animals for any reason whatsoever, is the core solution to climate change. Okay, so at first I didn't know it was the root cause of climate change. I wasn't sure, but I knew it was part of the solution to climate change. Okay, that was pretty quick, pretty easy to establish, because there is so much land being used for growing animals, and if we leave that land alone and let forests come back, I was just doing back of the envelope calculations. I said, gee, we should be able to reverse climate change. So why isn't anybody talking about this? But no one had really done the calculations themselves, right? So we had to go through the models to really understand that it is true.
Yeah, the Swiss did a lot of research on this and came up with a number of, if you put a certain amount of hectares and you plant just plants and you create forests, we could wipe out all of these problems that we've done.
Right.
Just by planting.
Right. So we now know that, because the paper came out in 2019, I think, from Searchinger, 2018 or 2019. Searchinger and his colleagues from Princeton University, who showed that if the whole world goes vegan, we can actually reverse, basically suck down all the carbon we're emitting from fossil fuels. So CO2 levels will not go up anymore. That's it. And then as we cut down the fossil fuel emissions, CO2 will get sucked down from the atmosphere and it will stay on the ground. So we can reverse climate change. So going vegan is the foundational solution to climate change.
And the UN came out with their study of livestock's long shadow.
Right.
which was quite, I think it woke up the environmental organizations who never considered that our food supply was actually the main culprit.
Yeah, the Lifestyles Long Shadow was pretty seminal in terms of my thinking process. Okay, because it came out in 2006, the first one. And reading through that, I realized that 1/3 of the land is being used just to graze animals. And you look at where the grazing animals are, and you see the land where we are grazing animals, and you see that there's hardly any carbon there, right? And then I found out that land has 3 times as much carbon as the atmosphere. So it was simple 5th grade arithmetic to figure out that if we just return those grazing lands back to forests, we should be able to reverse climate change, right? So I approached Al Gore at that time, and I asked him that question. In fact, we even wrote a letter to him saying this, and he was pretty non-committal. He said, "No, it's not as bad as you think. Eating animals is not as bad as you think," something to that effect. And so I thought, okay, maybe he's right, and I have to do my own research some more and really understand what's going on. And then in 2009, there was a paper by Goodland and Anhung who calculated that animal agriculture is responsible for 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions. At least, they said at least 51%. Okay. So when that came out, it was a bombshell. And people were talking about it. In Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, we were talking about it. And then he said, okay, the FAO was saying, oh, that's not peer reviewed. It's not peer reviewed science. So don't look at it yet. I said, okay, so let's see what happens in the scientific literature. So then there was a debate. So the debate happened in the Animal Feed Science and Technology Journal, where the FAO scientists were claiming that Goodland and Anhung's calculations were wrong. And they showed why it was wrong, point by point. And then Goodland and Anhung was asked to rebut. And they rebutted every point. So then when the FAO scientists asked Goodland and Anhung, when the editor asked the FAO scientists to continue the debate, they declined to continue the debate. At that point, I said, that's it. This has been established. This is established science. And we have to talk about this. So I wrote another letter to Al Gore, and I got all my colleagues to co-sign that letter. And this time, it was pretty much the end. He didn't want to talk about it. He said, we're not going there. So I walked out, and I basically focused on climate healers from that point on. And so we wrote our white paper in 2019. Now we are saying that it's actually at least 87% of all greenhouse gas emissions, not just 51%.
Because do you have the image that you actually did a poster with him and you crossed out the number? Can we put that image up, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically, when I walked out, so this is the picture. Oops, let me see if this works. So we had that saying 51%, and I just crossed it out and made it 87% to say that's the real impact right now. So that's my granddaughter. She was 2 years old.
Have you ever heard from him since then?
I'm still part of the Climate Reality Project. I get emails from them, and they know that I've written this white paper, and so there is a debate going on inside. So the white paper is now going to be published we have a situation where people are scared to quote a paper until it has been peer reviewed. I really think that we have reached a point where nobody wants to do even 5th grade arithmetic. They want someone else to go and check it. I find that so fascinating. I really think that today, if a little girl would tell the emperor has no clothes, someone is going to say, is that peer reviewed?
That's just her opinion. Yes. It's interesting that we have given our authority away to others who actually run an have an elitist way of being in the world, and do not believe that our instincts and our own experiences are enough.
Right. I know. We have stopped we don't have this. Our capacity for creative thinking is being slowly leached away from us. It's being pulled away from us. That's so unfortunate, because I think that's what the education system is doing to us right now.
Which is why this show, because the taglines of this show are learn. In other words, learn what you do not know, learn what is really going on, unlearn everything that you were ever taught before, and relearn.
Right.
But the relearn is relearn who you are.
Right.
You are not divorced from the food supply. You are not divorced from the soil. We are the soil. We are the food supply. It gets into our biology. It becomes us. This orange, if I eat this orange, it becomes me. It becomes part of my blood. My blood now has all the energy, all the vibration of this orange in it. If I add this passion fruit, every single bit of energy that's in this passion fruit, including the people who actually planted the seeds for it. If anybody did, maybe it was a bird. Then the energy of that bird is there. Any energy is in the soil, the worms, all the life below the soil that worked on this and on growing this tree. It's now going to become a part of me. Who picked it? The person who picked it, the person who harvested it, the person who schlepped it, the person who packaged it, the person who brought it to the farmer's market or to wherever we found it. All of their vibration, their energy is in this. If they were angry at the time, if they were frustrated, this is why I think farm workers need to be happy. I think we need to pay them well. We need to give them the conditions under which their work must be the highest, that really cultivate life at its highest form for them. To have them out in the fields when it's high noon in a sun that's so strong and so hot, the energies which is the lowest form of energy, because they're depleted, they're dehydrated, they're exhausted, and that's what we'll get. And then people say, oranges don't taste like they used to anymore, or they're not as sweet as they used to. But of course, look at the conditions of the person who picked it. They don't even have a place to sleep at night, some of them. So that is what we're eating, that is what we're drinking. And that's why we have climate chaos, because we have been divorced from all of this chain reactions and chain developments along the food supply. Who planted the seed? Where did the seed come from? Monsanto, who's now been bought up by Bayer, knows that the seed is the root of all the power to control human beings. We were not paying attention to our food supply. That's why Monsanto was able to come and take the seeds away. It's not because people say, oh, they're an evil empire. No, we allowed it. Right. We're that powerful. And the whole purpose of the show is to empower you to take back your powers and be totally and completely engrossed in where your seed comes from. Why does the tomato not taste like a tomato in the United States anymore, but you go to Italy and it tastes just like a tomato? Look at who grows it, look where it's grown, look at if there's a corporation that is hoarding the seeds for it, what the workers, the state of the workers, the conditions under which they work. That is what we need to start looking at, and not just look at how it tastes. Wonderful. So let's go back to your childhood, because see, you're ready. We already know you loved cricket, where you have to work together in a cohesive unit, and use what you're building right now. So when you were a child and you found yourself lost in thought or in action, and time and space just did not exist anymore, what were you doing?
I used to read a lot. I used to be immersed in my books, and I loved British humor, believe it or not.
Same here.
Yeah,
Especially the Scots. Especially the Scots.
yeah. I had a favorite author. I mean, we had a couple of favorite authors. P.G. Woodhouse was one. And did you like P.G. Woodhouse too?
I did, but I want to know what did you like specifically about P.G. Woodhouse?
The way he made fun of the nobility. So it was basically all tongue in cheek, the way he wrote his books. And people put on these airs, and I'm superior to you, and then you see them being taken down a peg or two. So that's what I loved about that. And there was another author I really loved. His name is Jerome K. Jerome.
I don't know this person.
He's from the 19th century. So it's pure humor.
We must put that in the comments, because I'm going to then look it up, and I would love me and the audience also to start reading also what anything that you recommend that he wrote, or just anything about him as well. People with a sense of humor needed.
Yeah, we definitely need that. So he wrote something called Three Men in a Boat.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a great story. I used to reread it over and over just to see because I missed certain passages, I would go back and read them again. So yeah, I loved getting immersed in books a lot. And I also used to do a lot of debating and essay writing competitions and things like that. So I used to love those.
Wow. Now, when you were a teenager, what stands out when you think of your life as a teenager? What stands out for you as the most impactful thought or event or condition or circumstance?
So when I was a teenager, I would say, getting into the Indian Institute of Technology, which was a highly competitive entrance exam. So getting into that was a seminal event during my teenage years. And then and that institute had a policy that you had to stay on campus. So I had to leave home and go and stay with all my fellow students. And so that became a really large community I still am a part of that. We still there are about 200 of us, and we are on WhatsApp now. We have a alumni group for the IIT crowd.
When I was in India, I was really shocked about how many schools of technology there were. And I would pass these things. I go, is that a modern palace? And no, I was told, no, that's a school of technology.
Yeah, there are a lot of them now. But when I was doing my engineering, this was in 1976 when I entered, IITs were the premier institutions. So everyone had to take this entrance exam. So 100,000 students took that entrance exam, and only 2,000 got in. So so it's like that. You have to be in the top 2% of those taking the entrance exam. And so they made that entrance exam pretty tough, just to see who, just to pick, cause a differentiation between the students.
So did you do your O levels and A levels before you got in there?
Yeah, I had to finish my high school's secondary school leaving certificate, and then I had to also do a pre-university course. So PUC. So it's roughly 12 years of schooling before you can take this exam.
So then what are the three highlights of your life?
The three highlights to date, you mean? Yeah. One is
from your first memory up to today.
I would say meeting my wife was a highlight of my life. She was, because we were both students at Stanford together.
Oh.
And so I met her I remember in the basement of the engineering building for the first time. And we were standing in line getting coffee together. So that's the first time I spoke to her. And I would say the birth of my children is a highlight of my life, because you realize that something that something amazing happens, when a child is born. And of course, the birth of my granddaughter is probably is the one that I look back on now and say that was the most impactful event in my life.
And it's impacted the fact that you started this whole thing. Could you explain what your promise to her was and why you promised that to her?
Yeah, so let me start by, when she was born, I had been studying the environment for 3 years, and I was getting more and more depressed.
Mm.
Because you realize how much everything we're doing is the opposite of what we should be doing.
Yes, 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 yes.
Right. So and I was thinking, my God, how can I, how can anyone change this? Right. I mean, we're going down the tubes. That's the way of looking at it. And when she was born, I came to see her when she was a month old, and so I held her in my arms for the first time, because until then I thought that human beings are the only species that does not belong on Earth. If you just take human beings out, the planet will be just fine. It'll bounce back and everything will be fine. Every other species will be happy. So, but when I looked at her and she looked up at me and she smiled, and it was kind of a knowing smile, it's a radiant, knowing smile I saw in her. And it was as if she was saying to me, "What do you mean I don't belong? I belong exactly as I am." Right? And so instantly my mind said, my God, she belongs exactly as she is, which means I'm not looking at it right. See, Wayne Dyer had said that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Mhm.
So I said, there must be a different way of looking at the same thing that would change the way I would look at what's happening in the environment. So that's when I came up with this idea of a caterpillar turning to a butterfly, that we're in the caterpillar phase and we are, being consumers. They even call us consumers, right? So when they call me a consumer, I say, no, I'm not. I don't want to be a consumer, right? I want to be a contributor to the planet, right? So that's the caterpillar phase that we are in, and I realized that she is now going to bring us into the chrysalis, and then we'll become butterflies. Okay, and so I decided at that point that I was going to treat her as special, that I was going to listen to her, and I'm going to learn from her. Because to me, it's really about going back to our childhood, right? And so what better way to go back to our childhood than to learn from a child? So I decided I was going to do everything she wants. I was never going to say no to her. And then I was going to tell her that she's the most amazing thing that ever happened to me, and that I'll always love her no matter what, right? So these are things that I kept telling her. And basically, she taught me. I really learned a lot. She opened my eyes to a lot of the human supremacism that's in our stories, that I had been blinded to.
Mhm.
Because there is a lot of human supremacism in our stories, in our epics also, right? Where we hunt animals, even the concept of hunting, she couldn't get it. She said, why would anybody shoot a deer? That poor deer is just sitting there drinking water and you want to shoot it? What's wrong with you? Right? So, and to me, that was normal. Shooting a deer was normal because it was in our epics. It was in our stories. It's the opening of our epics. There's someone shooting a deer. So that, the learning from her helped me unravel some of the blinders that I had put on me, that I had been subjected to. Okay. And I began to see the speciesism that we live in, because fundamentally we have power over animals. Okay. And it's what do we do with that power? Are we torturing animals or are we taking care of them? So with that power, we can do either. We can nurture them or we can torture them. And I noticed that most of us were torturing them. I mean, we were just participating in this willful torture that's going on. And you can see the impact of it. So the wild animals are dying out, they're dying at a fast rate. And I was calculating that we were on pace to wipe out almost 100% of all the wild vertebrates by 2026. Okay, so that calculation, I made that in 2014 first. By looking at the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report of 2014, which said that between 1970 and 2010, 52% of all wild vertebrates had died out. So I did an extrapolation of that, assuming that the rate at which we are killing wild vertebrates is proportional to the size of our economy. Okay, I thought that was a good approximation. So I just extrapolated and said, if we keep growing the economy at the same rate, how much time do we have left? And the answer was 2026. We're going to get to 100%. So I was shocked. And my granddaughter was just 4 years old at that time. And I said, I started studying the literature, saying, why isn't anybody talking about this? Right? And I noticed that they were all using a more complex model. So I thought maybe I'm wrong and I need to just wait and see, wait for the next report. Okay. The next report came out in 2016. And it said that between 1970 and 2012, 58% got wiped out. So we lost, we are losing like 3% per year. And at that rate, we are on track to get to 100% by 2026. This is just simple linear extrapolation. You don't need, it's just simple mathematics, right? And so that's when I was reading a story to my granddaughter in bed. And at the end of the story, she asked me this question. Who were the first human beings? And I promised her that I'll never, ever lie to her, right? So I told her, okay, I'm going to explain to you how it works. I said, imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mama by your hand. And you ask your mama to bring her mama to stand by her side and so on. You create a long line of these mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother and so on. By the time these two lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they would merge because both lines are going to say, that's my mother too. Immediately, she just sat up in bed and she said, what? Are you telling me that animals are my family? And I said, yeah, now that you put it that way, they are your family. In fact, I hadn't put it that way, okay, because I was looking at it theoretically in my mind. I mean, for her, it went straight to her heart, the impact of that story. And so she said, animals are my family? Then why are people eating my family? Grandpa, make them stop. And she started bawling. She started crying, saying, people are eating my family. Make them stop. Make them stop. And I realized I had created a world full of monsters for my granddaughter. Okay, because she's seeing all these monsters around her now. And I said, Kimaya, this is what I do. I'm trying to make them stop. This is all I do. It's my job to make them stop. And she said, this is your job. This is your job. You haven't done your job. She's like 5 years old. Okay, she's telling me, you haven't done your job. She said, when will you do your job? Right? And I told her I have to do it by 2026. Otherwise, we are all in big trouble. So that's how the Vegan World 2026 happened. I mean, she basically made me give her a pinky promise that it'll happen by 2026. Yeah. And then she told me, I didn't know what a pinky promise meant. Okay. So she gave me the pinky promise and then she said, you can never, ever break a pinky promise. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm stuck now. I have to figure out how to do this. And at first I thought, who am I to do this, right? Who am I to figure this out?
Who are you not to do it?
I know. Yeah, I know. But the next morning, I woke up realizing that I am perfectly trained for this. I am a systems engineer, and it's really an engineering problem. Basically, we have a culture that says this is who we are. All men are created equal. We all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, all these great things, right? And then you have a civilization which is implementing that culture. And the civilization is the exact opposite.
Mhm.
See, we have the tremendous inequality, and people are being thrown in jail. There is no right to life because basically you have to earn a living, which is the opposite of a right to life.
Mhm.
Right? So I said, okay, this civilization is the opposite of a culture, which usually means that there is something fundamentally wrong in our assumptions about life. So I started studying that, and I realized that um, the idea that happiness comes from outside of you, that's one of the fundamental mistakes in the way we have implemented it. Okay, so that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of desires, which is what our advertising is all about, our consumer society is all about, right?
Buy,
And
buy, buy. You want to feel better? Buy this. You want to
right.
feel better? Buy that. Yes. You're
So I
feeling
realized that's a fundamental flaw,
yes.
And the second fundamental flaw is that life is a competitive game in which the privileged can possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the underprivileged.
And each other.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and for the pursuit of happiness. So, so those two are fundamental flaws. And when you build a civilization on fundamental flaws, it's not going to work. You're going to be doing the exact opposite of what you said you're going to do. So, so this is why the systems engineering has been such a blessing for me to look at these, to analyze these things, and to say, okay, yeah, if you now build a civilization on the truth, foundational truths, you can actually make it work. Just like we know how to make a rocket ship go to Mars. You know, if you start assuming that the sun goes around the Earth, you will never get it to work. Right? So we have to start by saying the Earth goes around the sun. Otherwise, your science is all messed up.
So if we are also animals, because I do think we're all, I think the reason why we do things like this to animals and other living beings on Earth, like minerals, and I mean, we are excavating all these places and taking out all the minerals, and we're bleeding out the oil from the earth, is because we've forgotten who we are.
Right.
Not only are we fellow animals, but
Right.
we are also part of every living thing that walks the earth, flows on the earth, flies on the earth, and crawls on the earth. And it's the actual lost memory of that that has allowed us, I believe, to allow the sort of establishment that is now called big
Right.
agriculture, to come in, steal our seeds. They didn't even really have to steal them; they just took them because there was nobody guarding them, and there was nobody really saying no to them.
Right.
And take the water, what is being done to the water, and commodify food, commodify trees, commodify water, commodify now air. Do you know that a lot of the luxury cars are now coming with air purifiers?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Air, we've made the air so toxic right now. So instead of us cleaning up the air, they just simply make sure that they have their own purified air. And they have air purifiers everywhere. So instead of us being us versus them, why not simply recharge our memories with truth? Why not realize that we are not here willy-nilly? We weren't just thrown here willy-nilly and left here to fend for ourselves on earth. That there is within us, there's also a seed. We also came from seed. And we have to nourish and plant the seed, and we have to give it the same amount of nutrition, fertilizers. We have to water it, the cleanest amount of water. It needs air, it needs sunlight, and it needs rest. And so we need the moon and the stars. We need to make sure that each and every one of us is nurtured and nourished with each and every single element that exists on earth. So we cannot nourish ourselves without any of the elements. We need to make sure that we are all so well nourished. Every child on earth, what if every child was given the same opportunity and every child was taught that he and she is made up of all the elements that make up the rest of the earth, that makes up a tree, that makes up this beetroot, that makes up every plant, that makes up every single nut or every seed or every fruit, that each of the elements that makes us up makes me up, makes you up. And so we need to replenish all of these elements in all of us, in the plant, in the soil, and in us. And what we're planting is us. When we plant a seed in the earth, we're just replanting ourselves, because out of the earth then will come, if we have clean water for it and we nurture it, will come the sustenance that we call food, that will nurture us and nourish us, and we in turn nourish and we nurture the earth because it's part of us, because what was in the earth now becomes us. The waterways, if we clean up the waterways, we're cleaning up our blood. Look at the amount of people with leukemia now. Isn't it interesting that what indigenous people see as the waterways, which is our blood, it's becoming congested now, just as the waterways of the earth, the oceans, the streams, the lakes, the rivers are becoming congested. So if we put all of our ideas and all of the indoctrination in a box and say, I'm going to start looking at these from a critical point of view, and I'm going to re-examine them. And what does not serve life, I'm letting it go. That's the purpose of this show, to assist you in doing that, in putting that box together and giving you the critical skills to do that, and then giving you not recipes. You will have chefs coming on and doing recipes, because it's going to be also Vegan 101. How do I then transition to a plant-based diet? What do I do first? How do I do this? What's the easiest and quickest way? Because I don't have time to be in that kitchen. I hear this a lot. I don't have time to be in the kitchen. You're going to be learning from start how you don't have to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So we're going to be teaching you that. But the most important recipe is that you matter. So no longer will somebody say, I'm disgusted. I cannot do this anymore because obviously I don't matter. Big ag is in charge. The banks are in charge. The government is all bought out by the corporations. They're all in charge. There's nothing I can do. Oh, yes, they only did that because you were absent in the equation. You absented yourself in the equation. And you did, when we're children, your grandchild, her power was totally intact. This is why she jumped out of bed and she said to you, then you're not doing your work.
Right.
Only somebody who's totally have their full power intact would recognize that or say that. But when we realize that we all are here to assist each other, be with each other, grow each other, nurture each other, then no longer will we desecrate the earth. We will see ourselves as sacred beings, as the sacred contract that we have the moment we were born, that we have a sacred contract that we have to live out. We cannot just give up. We cannot just say, forget it. We cannot just say, I don't want to deal with this anymore. There's so much mental illness, so much emotional illness, so many people yelling and screaming at each other, so many people knifing each other, shooting each other, because they're biochemically disadvantage. We're all a big chemistry factory. And every time you put something into this chemistry factory, you change the chemistry or you desecrate it even more. And so we need to change that. And that's what we're going to be teaching on this show, how to do that. So it's not just how to transition into plant-based diet, but how to do this sensibly, how to do this in a reverent way, where you're no longer doing it just for the animals. You're doing it for every living plant, every living being, for every mineral on earth. But most of all, you're doing it because life matters. And we're going to be celebrating life on this show.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's because of you. You manifested this.
Oh,
so how, my question, a very important question that I've always wanted to ask you, how has your study of the Bhagavad Gita, because I know you're teaching it now, how has that informed your life?
Oh, it has changed my life. From the minute I opened that book, the and started reading the translations, one by one from Purushottam Lal. I found the story of the wishing tree in it, and it just opened my eyes right away, saying, "Okay, we are just not telling the right story." But the wishing tree story actually has this moment where the child sees something. Then they don't tell you what he sees. He sees that there is this brilliant cosmic swindle being performed in the universe.
That's a brilliant word, swindle. Yes.
Yes, it's a swindle being performed in the universe. And I was like intrigued. What is this swindle? Right? I wanted to know what this swindle is. And that was the quest I went on for the next 5 years. And that's all because of the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita informs everything that I do since then. It's been.
Could you explain to our viewers who have never heard of the Bhagavad Gita exactly what it is and why is it so central a theme that I will be drawing on to and why you're teaching it now and where do you teach it?
Yeah, so I teach it at the Hindu University of America. I'm teaching a course called the Dharma of Global Sustainability. And I'll be teaching another course next quarter on the Yoga of Global Transformation. And the Bhagavad Gita is the central text of the Mahabharata, which is an epic. It's an epic which is like the Iliad or the Odyssey. People are familiar with the Iliad and the Odyssey, but the Mahabharata is entirely in verse, so it was sung by people. And I think our ancestors used to just memorize, and then they used to then modify it too, because it was an oral tradition, the Mahabharata, and it's actually 7 times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey put together. It's that complex. Okay, but the Bhagavad Gita is one section of it, and it was a dialogue between God, who is actually the charioteer of the main warrior in the Mahabharata. And so it was a dialogue between God and the charioteer, Arjuna. And Arjuna has this doubt as to why should he fight this battle? Because it is a battle between cousins. And he said, why should I fight this battle? Why don't I just give them the world? Let them have what they want. And so God is persuading him why life is about action. It cannot be about sitting still and letting it happen to you. That you need to act, and why you should act for the benefit of all. So that's the dialogue. And so it's really a gospel of action.
Oh, I love that, gospel of action.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what will be informing the show, the Climate Healers Food Show. That each and every act that we take matters. Each and every act has a consequence to it. Mm-hmm. If you feel exhausted and tired in the morning, is depleted, change who you think you are. Change your thoughts about yourself. The only way to raise your vibrational energy really quickly is to change the thought, change the language we use. We're going to be talking a lot about languaging here. How we language ourselves into eating something that we know is going to be depleting us, making us exhausted, tired, which is exactly what the corporations want. That's why they sell us exactly the things that deplete us the most. And what do? We go out and we buy them with the little money we have, and then we get depleted more, and then we criticize them when they take charge and they control our lives, when we've given over control to them. And we're going to be connecting the dots, but we're going to be showing solutions because this is solutions-based.
Wonderful.
Show. It's a solutions-based show. So we're going to be empowering you to take your power back, to realize how much you've given it away. First of all, we've got to realize first that we've given it away. That's why the tagline is learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because only when we have destruction can we have creation. And that's what I learned from the Bhagavad Gita, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That we need destruction in order to have creation. And that whole thing with Arjuna saying, why am I killing my cousins? That's my favorite part, that question, because that was my question as a child. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
I think it's a story for children, because those were my problems when I was a child. Why is that cow being killed? Because I refused to eat meat as a child.
Mm.
Absolutely refused it. But not because I knew what was going on. I just automatically, most babies and children reject meat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's really interesting how we bring up children because, for example, the first teeth that come in are what are called the milk teeth in Australia. I don't know if they call them that in this country, but these are the four teeth right here.
Mhm.
And when we're getting the milk from our mothers, not from an animal, not from the mother of a sheep or a goat or a cow, but from a human mother. We don't go to the dolphins and get their milk, so I understand why a cow is okay.
Right.
So, or a rat. So it's interesting that we're so incredibly programmed that we don't even question this. So we're going to assist you in your reprogramming, not by telling you what to do, but just asking the questions and just teaching you critical skills. We're going to question everything. So question everything that I say and what I do too. Question everything. If you do that, then I've done my job.
Mm.
The whole idea is to get you to start taking your power back. And that's what you'll find from this show. You're not going to find this show in mainstream media. It will never appear in mainstream media until everyone is like-minded and decides this is what we want. You will never find this kind of a show being lauded and getting Emmy awards and whatnot. The award that we want is that you wake up one morning, you feel empowered and you feel, oh my gosh, my life matters. I really do have something to say and do here, and it matters. That's the kind of award that we are looking for. So your voice matters, and we hope that you will join in and that you will totally and completely allow yourself not to be hypnotized, but to be romanced to the truth of who you are. That you are every single beautiful bird, every flower that we pass. The thing that I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh that influenced me the most was when we were doing a retreat. And he said to us, as we were doing he had taught us walking meditation already. And we were going to be walking from where we were to the cafeteria we were going to eat for lunch. And lunch was always mindful, so it was in silence. And we always walked in silence. And he said, as you are walking past the trees, just remember that each and every, look at the trees and remember they're eavesdropping on your thoughts.
Mm.
And I went, oh my gosh. And he goes, is that the thought you want them to hear? Now, this was a big deal for me because to me, trees were the highest beings on earth. They're who I go to for my comfort. They're who I go to explain what's going on with me. They're who I go to get the energy to refurnish myself and refurbish myself to start all over again. And so that really hit me, really, really hit me. And that's when I realized I've constantly got to be mindful of my thoughts because they're everywhere, these trees, eavesdropping on my thoughts. And so that's where I want really my own life to matter, that every single tree that eavesdrops in my thoughts will feel elated, will feel energized, and will feel that they matter. Mm. And so our thoughts are where we're going to start on this show. Looking at your thoughts around food, for example, this man today on Twitter, he wrote in something that I wrote, he goes, oh, that's all nonsense. He said, we need meat for testosterone. I'm a man and I need meat for my testosterone. I did not respond to him because he was only in it for argumentative sake. I am not here to argue with anyone. You don't have to believe anything I say. Question what I say, but try it. Just listen long enough and then challenge yourself. Where did you get this thought from that rejects it? Is it you rejecting it? Or are you simply rejecting it because this is what you have been taught? Most of our language is not our own. Most of our thoughts are not our own. They're just recycled thoughts from what we have been taught. We've been taught to think and feel and say and do. We have belief systems. I want to actually bring on the ideas here of John Trudell. John Trudell, who was, to me, the greatest American who ever lived. He happened to be, he was a Native American. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have belief systems. And because of him, I've given up my belief systems. And I want you all to call on me if you ever hear me start a sentence, I believe, or it is my belief, because that is where we get stagnated. And our blood is stagnated. That's why we're having cancer and illnesses and diseases. The waters are stagnated. We need movement. We need to move through our lives. I'm going to be bringing movement in on the show because we need to move. Do you know that plants move? All of living beings move. All of life moves. Look at the plant coming from under the earth and growing up. That's the plant moving, and it becomes this beautiful thing we're going to be doing. Looking at that when we're going to be doing sprouting. We're going to be growing microgreens and watching the movement. And yet we get up every day and we think we shouldn't move, and then we call it exercise. And then you have to find time for exercise. But you've got to move the chi. You've got to move the blood. That's the only way to stop these thoughts from taking control of you, is to simply recirculate your blood, move it, and get clean water, clean food in you, and then begin to challenge yourself in your life. If you're living a life in a mansion right now, and you're looking at this and saying, oh, please, I just need a new Ferrari. Challenge that thought. Where did that thought come from? And on your deathbed, are you going to say, I should have had a new Ferrari? We're going to go and to take us back to the seed of who we are. Not just the seed and the soil. We're going to see that there's no difference between the seed and the soil and us. We're going to connect the dots. I believe that everything is a metaphor for our lives. And we're going to look at every single story that we tell ourselves, and we're going to dismantle it all. And that's why learn, unlearn, and relearn. I am so grateful that you exist. I am so grateful. And I'm so grateful that we have this show. And I'm so grateful that this is something which we can all take part in. It's not my show, it's our show. And I welcome suggestions and thoughts and ideas. And I will be reading your comments, and they'll be part of the show, as long as they're not nasty and rude. Because I do not take part in that vibrational energy. But you will. My intention is that when you leave the show, you leave feeling honored, respected, heard, and you walk away knowing that you matter. That's the point of the Climate Healers Food Show. So thank you all for tuning in today. And Dr. Rao, just quickly tell us, why did you create the films, all of them, but specifically your two most popular one, Cowspiracy and What the Hell?
Oh, I didn't create them. Others created them.
Producer.
Yes, I'm one of the producers, executive producers of those documentaries. And they all just showed up on my lap. I never really went around looking for them. People contacted me and said, would you like to support this? And I said, yes. And so we have now, we are going to have another 5 documentaries coming out this year. So we're looking at this from every angle and showing why from every angle it makes sense to change our food habits, to transform our food system. So thank you so much for this, for what you're doing.
And in doing so, we transform ourselves.
Absolutely. Transform yourself, transform your world.
And that is actually, if you go on the climatehealers.org, please go on climatehealers.org, see how you can participate, see how, maybe it's just to watch, maybe it's just to read, maybe it's just to support it just by being an observer. Maybe it is to get involved, whatever it is that really says to you, this is my path. This feels authentic to me. Please let us know, because now the show is live today, but I have to learn how to edit, because I don't know how to edit, because the show is going to be recorded. We're going to be having lots of guests, a lot of materials. We're going to be actually going to a permaculture farm in Costa Rica. Learning about the earth, learning what the importance of permaculture is, why big ag needs to step out of the way, and why we now have some solutions that we would like to start putting into place, because it works. We're going to look at what works, what doesn't work at the moment, and we're going to be constantly examining, re-examining what we're doing on this show. So thank you, Dr. Rao.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Please tune in, please spread the word, and please let us know how we can best serve you.